He had no website, no social media account, no business listing anywhere online. If you wanted to hire him, you tracked down his wife and hoped she passed the message along. That was Chase Morrill, a carpenter working out of central Maine, rebuilding rotting cabins that nobody else wanted to touch. And yet, from that starting point, he built a television franchise that ran for 13 seasons, expanded to 2 countries, and produced enough revenue streams to open a bed and breakfast while simultaneously filming a new show. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how a man who specifically didn't want to be found became one of the most recognized names in American renovation television, and what the business actually looks like behind the scenes. To understand where Chase Morrill ended up, you have to understand where he started and how deep those roots go. Chase was born on December 25, 1977, in Augusta, Maine. Not a city in the traditional sense. Augusta is the state capital, but it's a working town, surrounded by lakes and timber country, and the kind of landscape that makes people either stay forever or leave for good. Chase stayed. He's a 10th-generation Mainer. That's not a figure of speech. His family has been in that state for generations, and the relationship with building and construction runs just as deep. His father, Eric, was a builder. His grandfather was a civil engineer. His grandmother handled plumbing. Chase has said he grew up with a hammer in his hand, following his father around job sites before he was old enough to be useful on them. When Chase was old enough, he enrolled at the College of the Atlantic in Bar Harbor, a small, unconventional school that focuses on human ecology. He earned a degree in community planning, not architecture, not construction management. Community planning. It's a detail most people skip past, but it matters. It means Chase came into this industry not with a contractor's license in hand, but with a framework for thinking about places and the people who live in them. That sensibility would later define every project he took on. After college, he came home. He teamed up with his college roommate and started a construction company called Maine Waterways, specializing in finding abandoned properties, renovating them, and selling them. It was modest, it was unglamorous, and it worked well enough to eventually spin into a more formal operation with his sister Ashley and her husband Ryan Eldridge, a company called Kennebec Property Services. There was no website, there were no press releases. Clients tracked Chase down through his wife Sarah, a registered nurse, or through word of mouth in the Augusta Gardner area. That was the entire marketing strategy. But here's the part that changes everything about what you just heard. Chase Morrill wasn't sitting around waiting to be discovered. That's the thing that gets missed when people tell this story. In 2016, he was working on a property in Carabasset Valley, a deteriorating A-frame cabin from the 1970s that the previous owners had nicknamed the Bucking A. He lifted the structure onto a new foundation, treated the rot, added a dormer, installed pinewood paneling, and updated the utilities. Standard work by his measure. The kind of job where he'd be on his knees in the crawl space installing a water heater before noon. At that time, Dorsey Pictures, a production company based in Denver, Colorado, was searching for a specific kind of television crew. They wanted carpenters based in Maine who specialized in renovating old camps and salvaging as much original material as possible. A family friend connected Chase to the production company. Chase took the call out of curiosity, not ambition. He brought the idea to his crew, Ashley, Ryan, their friends Jared Baker and Matt Dix, while they were all working together on another project. They thought he was joking. Chase was known for making jokes on the job. When they realized he was serious, they talked it over and agreed to try it. The pilot episode was filmed at a pondside camp in Vassalboro, Maine. The crew transformed it into a livable cabin. The footage was compelling enough to move forward. Maine Cabin Masters premiered on the DIY network on January 2, 2017. Chase's assessment going into it was direct. If we weren't doing this on TV, we'd still be doing this. If the show gets picked up for more seasons, great. If it doesn't, great. There's no shortage of work. That turned out to be one of the most understated things anyone has ever said about a television career. What happened next is the reason this story spread across the internet. Thus, the response to Maine Cabin Masters wasn't gradual. It was immediate. Within its first 3 seasons, the show became the #1 program on the DIY network in the United States. By the time season 3 aired, it had attracted over 3.5 million viewers from its premiere alone. For context, that's a cable viewership number that most renovation shows spend years chasing. Maine Cabin Masters hit it in its early run. The formula wasn't complicated, and that was precisely the point. Chase and the crew take a dilapidated Maine camp, usually decades old, often structurally compromised, frequently owned by a family with deep sentimental attachment to the place, and bring it back to life within a strict budget and an 8 to 12-week timeline. No manufactured conflict. No flipped houses. No speculative real estate plays. Every cabin goes back to the family that owns it. The approach to materials was just as deliberate. Chase has described the philosophy as use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without. Old beams get reused. Lumber from one project ends up in another. Nothing leaves the job site that can be salvaged for something else. On one occasion, the crew ordered custom windows for a cabin that didn't arrive in time for the reveal. They installed a different set from storage, completed the project, then came back after the deadline to swap them out, absorbing the cost rather than holding up the client. The producers capture up to 40 hours of footage for a single episode. The crew's primary concern is always the finished cabin, not the television story. That authenticity, the sense that what you're watching is real work being done by real people, became the show's competitive advantage in a renovation television market crowded with staged transformations and manufactured drama. By the time the show moved to the Magnolia Network, it had accumulated enough seasons to be considered a franchise. The same 5 people, Chase, Ashley, Ryan, Jared Baker, known on set as Jedi, and Matt Dix, known as Dixie, had remained together through every season. That kind of cast stability is almost unheard of in long-running reality television. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. Television was the platform. The Kennebec Cabin Company was the engine. While the show was airing, Chase and his crew were simultaneously building something that didn't depend on any network renewing their contract. The Kennebec Cabin Company relocated to a larger headquarters at 9115 Western Avenue in Manchester, Maine, a property that became far more than a construction office. The facility now includes a retail store stocked with Maine art, crafts, tools, and Maine Cabin Masters merchandise. Adjacent to the store is the Woodshed, a restaurant and bar that operates 7 days a week, serving local brews and specialty sandwiches. From June through October, the Woodshed hosts Maine Cabin Masters episode watch parties and live outdoor music. The entire property functions as a destination for fans who want to visit something tangible, rather than just watch a show. The crew also launched a podcast called From the Woodshed in 2020, hosted by Chase and Ryan Eldridge. The podcast covers construction stories, camp life Q&A, and guest interviews, including, at one point, Magnolia Network's own Chip Gaines. It extended the brand into audio and gave the audience a way to engage with Chase and Ryan between television seasons. Then came the COVID-19 pandemic and an unexpected acceleration. Chase told Forbes during the pandemic period that the demand for cabin renovations surged dramatically as people across the country acted on desires they'd long been postponing. His brother-in-law Ryan put it plainly: many people who live in cities today didn't grow up in those urban environments. A lot of those folks went to metropolitan areas for work, but many of them never really left the country in spirit. Between the pandemic and the broader shift toward rural life, the Kennebec Cabin Company had more work than it could handle. By the time that wave crested, Chase was leading a crew that had grown from 5 people to nearly 25 carpenters working through the summer months. Most people who know this story stop here, but the real story starts right now. In 2022, something happened that barely registered in most coverage of the show, but it's one of the more revealing moments in this entire story. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency announced a settlement with Kennebec Property Services, the legal entity behind Maine Cabin Masters. The allegation was specific. During 5 renovation projects in 2020, all of them on properties built before 1978, the company had failed to follow the federal lead renovation, repair, and painting rule. The violations included allowing work to proceed on structures that may have contained lead-based paint without proper certification or certified supervisor oversight, and failing to maintain required documentation. The company settled in October 2022 and paid a civil penalty of $16,500. That fine was relatively modest. What was less modest was the remediation requirement that came with it. As part of the settlement, Kennebec Properties agreed to obtain formal RRP certification, follow EPA guidelines going forward, and, critically, produce public education content about lead safety in at least 3 upcoming episodes of Maine Cabin Masters and 1 episode of the From the Woodshed podcast. The EPA's official statement framed the logic clearly. Television renovation shows have a special responsibility to model safe work practices because their audiences imitate what they see on screen. Chase's team responded through a company spokesperson, saying they had worked collaboratively with the EPA to address the concerns and had committed to the required certifications and content. It's worth noting the context here. The EPA settled lead paint violations with several other renovation shows on the same network during this period, including programs that are far more widely known. Maine Cabin Masters was not an outlier. But the episode does illustrate what gets missed when a small construction company becomes a television operation. Federal regulatory requirements don't pause for filming schedules. The show continued airing. The audience largely never knew it happened. And the settlement's education requirement quietly reshaped what Maine Cabin Masters put on screen for an entire season. And that's when the decision was made, the one nobody around him saw coming. In 2023, Chase Morrill bought a historic property in the Molise region of Italy, a small, largely overlooked area in southern Italy known for its ancient stone villages and crumbling architecture. The property cost approximately $97,000. It had formerly been used as animal stables. Chase bought it as a family project, with the intention of converting it into a home where his wife Sarah and their 4 children, daughters Maggie, Nori, and Eva, and son Fletcher, could spend time together. What that looked like on the ground was more complicated than any Maine cabin job. Italian seismic regulations require that structural work on older stone buildings be supervised and executed by locally certified contractors. Chase's crew couldn't simply walk in and frame walls the way they would in Kennebec County. They had to work alongside Italian tradespeople who held the relevant certifications, adapting their methods to a completely different regulatory and architectural environment. The result became Maine Cabin Masters, Building Italy, a 6-episode spin-off that premiered on June 17, 2024, on Magnolia Network. Fan reaction was divided. Some viewers appreciated the family dimension. Chase's teenage children were involved in the project, including daughter Maggie managing the property's olive harvest. Others found the departure from Maine jarring and missed the specific landscape and community that had defined the show since 2017. Chase has been consistent in interviews. The crew's identity and focus remain in Maine. The Italy property is now a private family vacation home. No further international seasons have been announced. But the spin-off revealed something important about how Chase thinks about the business. He didn't go to Italy because a network asked him to. He bought the property first, for personal reasons, and then found a way to film it. That sequencing, personal investment leading to television content, rather than the reverse, is exactly how the original show came together in 2016. Here's what the comments kept asking, and here's the answer they never got, until now. As of mid-2026, Chase Morrill is running more operations simultaneously than at any other point in his career. Maine Cabin Masters is currently in its 13th season on Magnolia Network. The show's renewal status after season 13 has been listed as undetermined, not canceled, but not confirmed either. Linear ratings for season 12 ranged between roughly 211,000 and 565,000 viewers per episode, numbers that reflect the broader migration of cable audiences towards streaming platforms rather than any specific issue with the show itself. The content remains available on Max and Discovery+. In Monmouth, Maine, Chase and his wife Sarah purchased the Waters Run property in 2025 with the intention of converting it into a bed and breakfast. The entire Maine Cabin Masters crew has been brought in to complete the renovation in time for the opening. That project is now the subject of a new spin-off series called Maine Cabin Masters All In, set to begin airing summer 2026. In a May 2026 interview, Chase described the current state of the project as a race to the finish. On the construction side, the Kennebec Cabin Company continues to operate with a crew of close to 25 carpenters through the summer months. Chase has been actively bringing in younger tradespeople as apprentices, citing a responsibility to pass on practical skills to a generation he believes is increasingly interested in working with their hands. His son Fletcher is now old enough to use nail guns and impact drivers on job sites. Chase has described training Fletcher as both a father-son experience and a professional obligation, a recognition that the crew itself isn't getting any younger, and that the knowledge they've accumulated over decades has to go somewhere. Financially, estimates vary. Most sources place Chase's individual net worth at approximately $600,000. A smaller number of sources, accounting for the full picture of Kennebec Cabin Company's operations, the Italy property, the Waters Run bed and breakfast, podcast income, merchandise, and television earnings, estimate the total figure closer to $3 million. What's not in dispute is the structure. This is no longer a single television salary. It's a layered business built on top of a craft. The number that came next, nobody who followed this channel expected it. Chase Morrill is not a success story about wanting fame and getting it. He's almost the opposite. He was a carpenter who didn't advertise. His clients found him through personal contacts because there was no other way to find him. When a production company came looking for someone exactly like him, he said yes out of curiosity and made peace with either outcome before the first episode aired. If the show lasted, fine. If it didn't, there was work waiting. That's not modesty performed for a camera. His actions across 13 years back it up. He lives in an 1850s farmhouse in Wayne, Maine, that he and Sarah restored themselves, a house that was described as a teardown when they bought it. He buys properties in Italy not because a network greenlit a spin-off, but because he wants his family to have the experience of restoring something together. He opens a bed and breakfast in Monmouth because the opportunity arose and the renovation challenge interested him. The business that sits around all of that, the retail store, the restaurant, the podcast, the merchandise, the multiple television properties, grew from the same instinct that sent him into a crawl space in Carabasset Valley decades ago. You find a structure that has been abandoned and you bring it back. You use what's already there. You don't waste what's salvageable. The father who taught him that died of cancer in 2014, 3 years before the show aired. Chase Morrill never saw Maine Cabin Masters become the #1 show on the DIY network. He never saw the Kennebec Cabin Company headquarters, or the woodshed, or the spin-offs, or the apprentices his son is now training. What he left behind was a way of working, practical, frugal, anchored to place, that his son built an entire business empire on top of. That's the part that stays with you once the cabin is finished and the cameras stop rolling. Chase Morrill built something that most people in his position would never have thought to build. Not because he had a plan, but because he never stopped treating every project as an extension of the same work his father did before him. Right now, he's doing more at once than at any point in this story. Season 13 is in production. A bed and breakfast is racing toward its summer opening date. His son is learning to drive nail guns on an actual job site. And the crew that started as 5 people around a kitchen table is now closer to 25 on any given summer morning. The question worth sitting with is this. Chase Morrill walked away from the comfortable anonymity of a word-of-mouth contracting business and let television find him. But he never let television define him. Would you have made the same call? Or would the risk of exposure have been enough to say no to the family friend who picked up the phone?